Carl Jung identified 8 specific signs of what he called an extremely rare personality type. Individuals with differentiated consciousness who represent less than 5% of the population. These aren't personality quirks or random traits, but the specific manifestations of advanced psychological development that Jung discovered through his own perilous journey into the unconscious and through decades of meticulous clinical observation. This is not a path for the many. It is a destiny for the very few who are called to a higher order of psychological existence. If you've always felt like an outsider looking in, if you have perpetually sensed a fundamental difference in the very fabric of your being compared to those around you, this might explain why. If you've been told you're too sensitive, too intense, or that you overthink everything, you may indeed be part of this rare group. Mental health professionals often pathologize these very traits. Family members suggest you should just be normal, that you should learn to quiet the storm within. Society labels your depth as dysfunction, your complexity as confusion, your authenticity as antisocial behavior. You have been made to feel that there is something intrinsically wrong with your soul. But what if everything you've been told is wrong with you is actually evidence of humanity's next evolutionary step? What if your psychological complexity isn't a bug in your programming, but an advanced feature that others simply do not yet possess? Jung called individuals who achieve this level of psychological development the individuated, those who have successfully integrated the conscious and unconscious aspects of their psyche into a unified, harmonious whole. They represent what he considered the ultimate goal of human psychological evolution: conscious, authentic, and psychologically sovereign beings who serve as living catalysts for collective transformation. The 8 signs I am about to share with you are not personality quirks or random traits. They are the specific manifestations of what Jung termed the transcendent function, the psychic process that creates new levels of consciousness by uniting psychological opposites. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, you are not discovering what is wrong with you. You are discovering what is evolutionary about you. You are part of a psychological vanguard tasked with modeling what human consciousness looks like when it evolves beyond mass mentality into individual truth. The question is not whether you fit these patterns. The question is, are you ready to understand why you have always felt so profoundly different, and what that difference actually means for the future of human consciousness? The first sign of this rare personality type is what I call sacred authenticity. Here is what Carl Jung discovered that modern psychology still refuses to acknowledge. The inability to maintain fake personas is not a social deficiency. It is evidence of psychological evolution. You experience authenticity that feels almost supernatural, a compulsion towards truth that is as vital as breath. While others slip effortlessly between different versions of themselves at work, at home, with friends, you find yourself constitutionally incapable of this chameleon-like adaptation. You walk into a networking event and feel as if you are suffocating, the air thick with pretense. Small talk feels like speaking a foreign language you never quite mastered. Others seem to have received a manual for social performance that somehow never reached you. Jung called this conscious differentiation from the persona, the social mask we all wear for adaptation. But here is what he understood that others miss. Most people become unconsciously identified with their social roles. The teacher who remains didactic even at home. The executive who cannot stop performing authority. The people pleaser who loses themselves entirely in others' expectations. You cannot do this because your psyche has already achieved something extraordinary. You have naturally separated your true self from your functional masks. When you struggle with fake social situations, you are not socially deficient. You are accessing what Jung called sacred authenticity, the psychological foundation of individuation. The truth is, your discomfort with inauthenticity is your psyche protecting its hard-won wholeness. While others fragment themselves across different social contexts, losing touch with their core identity, you maintain an integrated sense of self that refuses to be compromised. This is not stubbornness. It is psychological sophistication. Yes, this makes you intense. Yes, people tell you you're too real or too much. But Jung discovered that this intensity is precisely what separates the individuated from the masses. Your authenticity creates what he called a psychological holding space. Others feel permission to drop their masks around you because your presence demands truth. The shadow side. Your authenticity can become a rigid superiority if you judge others for their necessary social adaptations. The gift. You are modeling what conscious human evolution looks like, a person whose inner and outer selves are courageously aligned. Your authenticity isn't making you difficult. It is making you whole. And in a world drowning in performance and pretense, wholeness is revolutionary. The second sign of this rare personality type is what I call conscious independence. Here is what Jung discovered that mainstream psychology still refuses to acknowledge. The person who does not need external validation has not become cold or disconnected. They have achieved shadow integration, the very foundation of psychological maturity. You experience a self-reliance that feels almost supernatural, an inner fortress that needs no external approval to stand firm. While others frantically check social media for likes, seek approval before making decisions, or change their opinions based on who is in the room, you operate from an internal compass that rarely wavers. People call you stubborn. They say you do not care what others think. Family members worry you are becoming isolated. Friends feel intimidated by your independence. Jung called this shadow integration, the conscious confrontation with everything you have been told is unacceptable about yourself. But here is what he understood that modern psychology misses. Most people remain dependent on external validation because they have rejected parts of themselves. They need others to approve of them because they have not approved of themselves. You have done something extraordinary. You have looked directly at your capacity for both good and evil, light and dark, strength and weakness. This considerable moral effort, as Jung called it, freed you from the endless cycle of seeking permission from others. When you make decisions without needing consensus, you are not being antisocial. You are accessing what Jung termed moral autonomy, the ability to follow your own ethical compass. The truth is, your self-reliance comes from having reclaimed the psychic energy most people waste on repression and projection. While others exhaust themselves managing their image and avoiding their shadow, you have integrated those disowned aspects and become internally referenced. This is not selfishness. It is psychological wholeness. Yes, this makes you seem aloof to those still trapped in approval seeking. Yes, people might find your independence threatening. But Jung discovered that shadow integration leads to disobedience and disgust, but also to self-reliance without which individuation is unthinkable. The shadow side, your independence can become arrogant isolation if you judge others for their necessary social connections. The gift, you are demonstrating what human consciousness looks like when it stops seeking external validation and starts trusting its own inner authority. Your self-reliance is not making you antisocial. It is making you sovereign. And sovereignty is the prerequisite for serving something greater than your personal needs. The third sign of this rare personality type is what I call transcendent balance. Jung made a revolutionary observation about personality types that completely reframes how we understand psychological development. Those who cannot be easily categorized as introvert or extrovert have not failed to develop a clear identity. They have transcended the limitations of one-sided consciousness. You experience an adaptability that feels almost supernatural. You can spend hours alone in deep thought, completely content with your own company, then step into a social situation and engage with genuine enthusiasm and presence. Others struggle to categorize you. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? They ask, genuinely confused. Some days you crave solitude like oxygen. Other days you seek connection with the same intensity. Jung called this developing both attitude types, extroversion and introversion, beyond your natural preference. But here is what he understood that personality testing culture misses. Most people become trapped in their dominant attitude. The extrovert who cannot tolerate alone time becomes compulsively social. The introvert who avoids all social interaction becomes isolated and stagnant. You have achieved something extraordinary. You have developed what Jung termed the transcendent function, the psychic process that unites opposites and creates new levels of consciousness. When you seamlessly move between solitude and social engagement, you are not being inconsistent. You are accessing the full spectrum of human psychological potential. The truth is, your balanced orientation allows you to serve as a bridge between different personality types. Introverts feel understood by your depth. Extroverts feel energized by your engagement. You naturally mediate because you have integrated both orientations within yourself. This is not social versatility. It is psychological completeness. Yes, this makes you hard to pin down. Yes, people find your adaptability confusing or even suspicious. But Jung discovered that this balance is precisely what allows continued psychological growth. Your ability to turn inward for wisdom and outward for testing creates the dynamic tension necessary for evolution. The shadow side, your balance can become restless inconsistency if you use it to avoid committing to any deep path. The gift, you are demonstrating what human consciousness looks like when it refuses the tyranny of one-sided development. Your adaptability is not making you unstable. It is making you whole. The fourth sign of this rare personality type is what I call sacred wholeness. While society obsesses over rigid gender roles, Jung identified something profound. The most psychologically mature individuals naturally transcend these artificial limitations by integrating their inner contrasexual nature. You experience a completeness that feels almost supernatural. If you are a man, you are comfortable with emotional depth, intuitive insights, and genuine relational connection without feeling it threatens your masculinity. If you are a woman, you express logical thinking, confident assertiveness, and independent decision-making without apology. Others find this confusing. You don't act like other men, they tell you. You are not like most women, they say, as if this is somehow a problem. Jung called this anima and animus integration, developing a conscious relationship with your inner opposite sex archetype. The anima in men represents the principle of eros, relatedness, feeling, creativity, and meaning. The animus in women embodies logos, reason, spirit, assertiveness, and discernment. Most people reject these qualities as incompatible with their gender identity, creating a psychological split that limits their full human potential. You have achieved something extraordinary. You have accessed what Jung termed your complete psychological toolkit. When you honor both your rational mind and your emotional intelligence, both your independence and your capacity for deep connection, you are not confused about your gender. You are accessing the fullness of human consciousness. The truth is, this integration is directly tied to your sense of meaning in life. Jung discovered that the anima is the archetype of meaning for men, while the integrated animus becomes the incarnation of meaning for women. Your ability to transcend gender limitations is not making you less of your gender. It is making you more fully human. Yes, this makes others uncomfortable with their own rejected qualities. Yes, people might question your adherence to traditional roles. But this wholeness is precisely what allows you to serve as a bridge between different ways of being, helping others access their own disowned potential. The shadow side. This integration can become gender superiority, judging others for their limitations. The gift. You are demonstrating what human consciousness looks like when it refuses to be caged by cultural conditioning. Your psychological completeness is not making you gender confused. It is making you whole.